I'm Joe from As the Joe Flies, and Leslie from Trips with Tykes is currently hanging out in Europe. I think she, as we are recording, just watched England beat Serbia 1-0 in the European Championships. But very excited, have a special guest today. Shawn from Miles to Memories is here to talk to us about Fantasy Springs, the newest addition to Tokyo Disney Sea. Shawn, welcome back to the podcast. So great to have you.
Thanks for having me, but I thought I was here to talk about Tiana's Bayou Adventure. What happened? We got a mix up here?
You got to get on that, and then we can talk about it. We'll have to talk about that next month. I mean, you told me offline that you may not be back in Walt Disney World for a while, so we'll see when you get to see that. Now, like to get the plugs out of the way to begin. A lot of you probably know Shawn either from his previous appearances on this podcast or know that Shawn and I have been longtime podcast co-hosts on the Miles to Memories podcast. But Shawn, you also have some other stuff cooking nowadays, so I'd love to hear you plug that, and then we can get to your Disney bona fides, which are substantial.
Yeah, I think other than, Miles to Memories podcast and milestomemories.com, we have our Vegas show where Mark Osterman and I do Las Vegas news in sort of a fun and lighthearted way, youtube.com/Miles to Memories. And then for people into travel hacking, we just launched a new YouTube show, 20-Minute Travel. Also very similar, kind of getting you all the information you need to know about miles and travel, but also in a fun way, kind of looking at this entire hobby that we are both a part of. That's a little separate than Disney, but it can certainly benefit people who love Disney as well. And that's 20-Minute Travel on YouTube or as a podcast as well.
Awesome. So let's talk about your Disney background. Knowing you for as long as I've known you, yes, you have a great background in Disney, but you have a great background in theme parks in general. Do you want to talk a little bit to people about where you're coming from in terms of theme parks and kind of your love for them?
Yeah, I grew up about an hour from Disneyland, and my grandfather was good friends with one of the original heads of PR for Disneyland back in the day. So we would always get free tickets. So I grew up at Disneyland. And as I grew into my adulthood, really got into sort of roller coasters and theme parks in general. And so I've traveled all around the world, been on over 1,000 roller coasters, been to amusement and theme parks just about everywhere. And I've been to all of the Disney parks at least 3 times. So this was my 5th visit to Tokyo Disneyland, 5th separate trip there, multiple day visits within that. But it's been really neat over the years with this being my hobby, with really loving it, not only to get to visit places once, but then also to kind of grow up with them. Like Hong Kong Disneyland, I visited right after it opened, and I've sort of watched that park grow from its infancy. That's been a fun little side effect of doing these international parks and trips. And there's so much really cool stuff outside of the US parks, which I guess people are sort of starting to realize, but it's true too. It's not just something that people say.
For sure. I'm seething with jealousy right now about all your travels to the international Disney parks. But yeah, we are here today to talk about Fantasy Springs, the newest expansion at Tokyo Disney Sea, opened on June 6th. You were there opening day, Shawn. So let's start by talking a little bit about what Fantasy Springs is. Now, for those of you who don't know, Tokyo Disney Sea, in contrast to Tokyo Disneyland, everything is water related. So there's like an area, I can't remember what the names are, but there's an area that is like New England based. There are areas that are kind of deep water, volcano. The big ride, of course, is Journey to the Center of the Earth. There are lots of other water themed areas. And the newest one to open is Fantasy Springs. Springs being water-based again. And this is a new land that has opened with 4 attractions. People are super excited about it. I've seen some pictures. I've been trying to mostly avoid videos, but you can't avoid all of them. And just everything I've seen is amazing. And Shawn, you were there opening day?
Yeah, opening day, which was a good thing and a bad thing, which I'll talk about in a second. But a little background on Disney Sea, because it opened the same year as California Adventure opened. And unlike the park in California where they did a lot of cost cutting, and obviously Disney went back and fixed a lot of that already, and that's not really something that's disputed. In Tokyo, they spent an incredible amount of money. And one reason is because the Tokyo parks are owned by a company called the Oriental Land Company that essentially franchises them from Disney. They use Disney for all of the development and Imagineering. So when you're in the parks, it doesn't feel like you're not in a Disney park. But the company has historically been willing to spend a lot more money than Disney on some stuff. And the reason I say that is because Disney Sea from the beginning was a park that was themed to a level above any other. As you say, water is the central force in the park, and it runs through the entire park. You can take boats from land to land. The center of the park is that volcano. That land is called Mysterious Island, and it's all Jules Verne themed. And you have an incredible ride and journey to the center of the earth. They also brought back a modern version of the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And every part of that park, whether it's the American waterfront, which is, they, like you said, they have a New England section, also a New York section, all the way back to where their Indiana Joneses and the Mexican themed section, and there's an Arabian themed area. The level of detail is steps above what you find in a lot of other places. You could just wander that park staring at all the little details all day. So Fantasy Springs had a lot to measure up to.
Now, what is the general theme of Fantasy Springs? Is it just they kind of are calling Fantasy Springs so they can throw in all the Fantasyland type attractions into there? Although, we'll get to it, but there is a plussed up version of Frozen Ever After, and let's save that towards the end. Big tease here. Your impressions on that?
Joe, it's sacrilegious to call this a plussed up version of Frozen Ever
Spoiler
After.
alert.
They're not the same ride.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Well, it's another Frozen attraction, which is not in Fantasyland because they wanted people to go to Epcot, of course, to meet Anna and Elsa and stuff like that in Walt Disney World. But yeah, so Fantasy Springs is the general theme, just kind of, we're just building a land where things are fantastical. It's kind of like Fantasyland, but just a water version.
Yeah, I guess to compare to the U.S. parks, it would feel most similarly like New Fantasyland in Magic Kingdom when they built it, although bigger and grander in scale. One thing about Disney Sea is it had focused for a long time on more thrilling attractions, so there were some people complaining that there's not enough for kids to do there. They do have a whole Ariel theme land with a kids coaster and some kiddie rides, and then they have the amazing Sinbad dark ride, which if anybody has never been on that, that's located in sort of the back near Fantasy Springs. So there were a few rides for kids, but a lot of the rides like Journey to the Center of the Earth, Tower of Terror, Indiana Jones, the Raging Spirits coaster, some of these were more geared towards older people. And I feel like this sort of was their attempt to bring in at once a huge expansion. And yeah, I basically would say, to simplify it, it's the fantasy land of Disney Sea.
Now, Shawn, if I can trouble you to share a little bit of video with me so that I can put this on our YouTube version of this. But for those who are listening to the audio version, can you paint us a little bit of a picture of what does Fantasy Springs feel like when you walk in? Are there any large features that are like really impressive? What stands out to you about the land, just from a vibes perspective?
Yeah, and when you start to enter the land from Disney Sea, you notice that there's just an incredible amount of rock work everywhere. And you start to look, and each bit of the rocks has Disney characters. So as you're entering the land, there's three distinct areas of rock, and one of them has Peter Pan, one of them has Anna and Elsa, and the other has Rapunzel. And these are carved intricately into the rock. And then as you go through the land, there's much more rockworks, many more springs, as you say, that run through. That gives it sort of the kinetic energy everywhere. And there's Disney characters everywhere. So basically, the theming is fantasy, but there are three distinct areas within this land. And that's really sort of the distinction, I think, is that they created these mini lands as we've seen them do within the larger thing. So Fantasy Springs, the overall theme, but then once you go inside, you get into Neverland, you get into Arendelle, and you get kind of right into Rapunzel's forest. And each one of these areas is quite a bit different.
How big does it feel when you go in? I think the most recent expansion we've seen is, I guess, Galaxy's Edge. Kind of sad to say, but in terms of footprint, forget like the square footage numbers. Like when you get in there, does it feel big? Does it feel like there's a lot to explore? Or does it feel like I remember when I first walked into Toy Story Land, which I love, by the way, but Toy Story Land just feels so small. Like all three attractions are kind of crammed into the same space. Not necessarily bad, but it didn't feel like even Galaxy's Edge, which I know gets a lot of crap for a lot of various reasons. I feel like at Galaxy's Edge, there's a lot to walk around, a lot to explore. You can spend time wandering around. What does Fantasy Springs feel like when you enter?
I feel like off the top of my head, it feels very similar in size to Galaxy's Edge. It's 35 acres. One kind of thing to note here is they spent over $2 billion on Fantasy Springs. So this is the most expensive expansion of any theme park ever anywhere in the world. And so the level of detail everywhere is incredible. And the other thing is I feel like Galaxy's Edge misses kinetic movement and the energy that happens. The water does a great job of keeping flow and keeping the areas sort of moving. And you have huge set pieces. They didn't sort of skimp anywhere. For instance, when you walk in, well, I guess we should talk about how you get in and then how do you want to go about this? Because there are some sort of things people need to know and some lessons I learned the hard way.
Yeah, let's get into that. By the way, Galaxy's Edge is 14 acres, so Fantasy Springs is a lot bigger. Maybe it was the currency conversion and it feels different. But we've been to Galaxy's Edge so many times. I totally get, like, I can't, it's tough for me to like gauge geography. I don't think in acres. Yeah, so tell me about your experience going to Fantasy Springs. Did you get to go 2 days or you only went the one day on the actual opening day?
Only got to go the one day because of poor planning. I could have gone back the last day, but we had spent so much time, we were sort of exhausted. The way it works is we're not in the era where you can just buy a ticket for a park and go in anymore. In Tokyo, they don't have multi-day tickets, so you have to buy a dated ticket for every day that you go, which is great. But the one thing people should know about Japan is the people tend to get there when the park opens. They line up early. And what you need in order to get into Fantasy Springs is two things. You can get a standby pass, which is a free pass that gives you sort of a return time. This is very similar, I guess, to a virtual queue in the US. And that standby pass will get you access to the land. Or they also have their paid version of Fast Pass, which is called Disney Premier Access. And you can buy a Premier Access for one of the rides, and then that will get you into the land. The problem being is if you're trying to get all of this at once, you can't really do it. So theoretically, you could get into the park in the morning and get a standby for one ride, get a Premier Access for another, and then you have to wait at least 60 minutes before you could get another Premier Access and up to 2 hours, depending on your return time on the standby. The rules are a little bit finicky, but you have to wait at least 60 minutes. So there's 4 rides there. And theoretically, right at the beginning of the day, you could get 2 of them. And then they are releasing space throughout the day. Unfortunately, have you ever gone and gotten in line? You got somewhere early, you strategized what was the best line, and then everything happens in that line. You get a slow person checking people. Well, that happened to us, and we watched people just sort of rush past us. So I'm freaking out as we get into the park. And then the app was sort of crashing because everybody was hitting it up. And I was only able to get a standby for one ride. And then I had to spend all day long sitting there refreshing my phone trying to get more opportunities to ride. And unfortunately, that's the reality, I think, some days at Disney parks in the US, and that's the reality at Tokyo Disneyland now. And that's how it's going to be for the foreseeable future. The Premier Access is going to depend on the ride. You're going to pay anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 yen, but that may be worth it. I think that people paying for it is definitely going to be part of your strategy when you're visiting.
So you were only able to get one of them, basically. So, like, which one did you prioritize? Which one did you decide? Are all 4 of the attractions on Premier Access, or is the like fairy tale Tinkerbell buggy thing not on it?
So only 3 of the 4 are on a Premier Access. The Tinkerbell ride, Fairy Tinkerbell's Busy Buggies, is not. So you can only get a standby for that one. So by the time we finally got through, I'm stressing out, and 2 rides pop up, Peter Pan and Rapunzel. And I chose Peter Pan because I wanted to ride that more. I should have chosen Rapunzel because it turned out Peter Pan was the one I saw most often refreshing in the app later on. I will say that a lot of times when I would see refresh space in the app later on, I would click it and get the air, kind of similar to the old days of Fast Pass where you would try to grab one that was released. So there was many hours of me thinking I got something and then I didn't. But fortunately, I was able to grab later in the day for free as well on a standby pass the Frozen ride, Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey, which was the sort of flagship ride of the land. So I was happy enough to get that. So I only got to ride Peter Pan and the Frozen Journey, left Rapunzel for the next time. And yeah, unfortunately, I never saw Tinkerbell's ride ever come back on. There were times where the line was 5 or 10 minutes, but if you never got that original standby pass, you weren't able to ride that. And I can't imagine, people going out of their way to get that one. So I guess that's probably the ride most people will miss if they're not able to perfectly score every one.
Now, let's talk about the rides a little bit. Let's talk about the ones you didn't do. The Tinkerbell one, I guess listening to the name, it doesn't sound like something. I guess it sounds like a kiddie ride to me, but maybe I just haven't done my research. What type of ride is that?
Yeah, it's sort of like a kiddie ride through the forest. If anybody's ever been to DCA on Heimlich's choo-choo train that they used to have back in the day, I've heard it sort of compared to that. We didn't get to ride it, but I did get to kind of see through the forest, and we walked up the exit and kind of saw into the ride. Think of a train ride through the Pixie Hollow where you're sort of shrunken down with lots of cool lighting and effects and stuff like that. Definitely a C ticket at best, not a huge ride or a draw for this area. Sort of the family, not a flat ride, but almost a flat ride, kind of cheaper ride.
Yeah, it's crazy with a ride like that. You still need to do. I'm sorry, I already forget. What's the name of their virtual queue thing for standby?
Standby pass.
Yeah, it's just
Yep.
bizarre to me, especially if the line gets low later. I mean, I guess it's kind of. I guess we have the same problem at Walt Disney World, right? Sometimes at the end of the night, you'll see, especially on like extended evening hours, you'll see there's no line at Tron, even though there's no virtual queue things still available. And then the other ride that you didn't get to do, Rapunzel. What is that one about?
So Rapunzel is in her forest, and this is a really neat land. On the top of it, you think you have Rapunzel's forest, okay, but Rapunzel's known for her big giant tower, and they have this right out in the middle of the land. I want to say it's like 40 feet tall, Joe, and Rapunzel is in the tower singing her song constantly. So that overlooks the sort of entrance to the ride, the queue. Everybody out on the midway can see it as well. So Rapunzel is just there in her tower singing, and it's fantastic. And then you go to the Lantern Festival, and it looks like a great traditional Fantasyland dark boat ride. Not to the level of Frozen, but it looks great. And again, I had to leave that one on the table. Now, just going back to strategy a little bit, had I chosen Rapunzel in the morning, I'm fairly confident I could have gotten Peter Pan later in the day along with Frozen. So I would have probably been able to do all three. So I would say if people are prioritizing, Frozen would be the most popular, then Rapunzel, then Peter Pan. So I kind of messed that up and went Peter Pan over Rapunzel. But it looks incredible. And just the fact that you have this giant Rapunzel animatronic up in the tower singing away. At night, this area looks spectacular. I can't wait to get on the ride, but I'm okay having it left on the table. I have seen some scenes from the videos and stuff, and it looks great. But I'm glad I got on Frozen because that was the if you're gonna pick one of the two boat rides, I think that's the one to do.
Yeah, it feels that way. Now, just going back to strategy a little bit, were you just not able to buy anything for Premier Access? Like you only had standby available, or was it because of the timing that you just weren't able to get what you wanted?
Now, Premier Access sold out right away. It does in busy days in Disneyland, or Disney Sea, anything in Tokyo Disney. So by the time we got in the park, even though we were lined up an hour early because we got in a little slower than everybody, there was not an option. All the Premier Access were gone. And then, like I said, they were re-releasing some standby through the day. I found that on the half an hours was when they were consistently releasing stuff. And the biggest dump came at 4:30 in the afternoon. That's when I was able to get Frozen. But never did I see Premier Access come back. So if you can't get it first thing in the morning, then you're probably not going to be able to get it. And you can only get one Premier Access every 60 minutes. So basically, for buying one of these rides, you're going to be able to buy one and then just assume that you're not going to be able to buy anything else because by the time that hour's up, they won't be available anymore, and you're kind of out of luck with that. So, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it seems stressful. Now, Peter Pan, it says on the website that it is another boat ride, but it says board a boat. So this one is not an actual like boat water ride. Is it just like Peter Pan, like Peter Pan, Peter Pan?
Yeah, this is really cool because they have Peter Pan's Neverland is the other sort of mini land here, and they have like the volcanoes. This is all done in the style of the Disney Peter Pan cartoon. So, which is really neat. And you have a version of Skull Rock and the Jolly Roger and kind of those similar scenes. We have those in Paris now, but they used to be in Disneyland. So you have a lot of water in the center, a lot of the sort of pirate Neverland theming. And then this particular ride is a trackless dark ride. And if anybody's ever been on Spider-Man or Transformers at Universal, this is sort of a reminder of that. Ratatouille could be a comparison, but I feel like this ride uses many more screens than Ratatouille does. Although I would say this ride is better than Ratatouille, but there's not a ton of physical sets here. There are some, but basically you're being brought into the Peter Pan cartoon. So all the visuals are done in that cartoon style from the original Peter Pan cartoon, and your trackless dark ride moves around. It's themed like a pirate ship. You fly around Neverland. The visuals are done really well, very high quality. Some people won't like the screens, but I think it fits well, especially considering that they already have two other dark boat rides in this land, that using this future tech worked well. And the fact that they're not trying to do anything realistic, you're in the cartoon. I loved it. I thought it was a great ride. I didn't expect to. I thought I would be a little bit more critical of the amount of screens they used, but for me, it sort of worked.
Man, when you say it, it's still crazy to me that they opened a land with 4 attractions. I was talking to Leslie about this. It's just wild to me that they were able to do that. But I mean, I guess that's what happens when the Oriental Land Company is involved. Now, remind me, Shawn, I am not as well traveled as you are. Is there a standard Peter Pan attraction in like Tokyo Disneyland, like the classic one that we all know and love?
Absolutely. So they do have that. It's still very popular like it is in the other parks. One cool thing about the Tokyo Disneyland version is it has a continually moving, it's a conveyor belt, kind of like an Omnimover, like Haunted Mansion or something. So it has a little bit higher capacity, but it only has the two-seater rows like you have at Disneyland. But yeah, they do have that. But this is, yeah, it's sort of taking that whole world and ecosystem, those characters from that Disney cartoon and bringing you to Neverland. And the movements of the car are very high tech. And like I said, I loved it. It worked really well for me. And they do have several places to eat in Fantasy Springs. I will say you have to do mobile order just to be able to order from them. And even by the time we had our ability to go into Fantasy Springs, they were sold out. So we couldn't even order food from them. But they have some really interesting themed establishments here, including the Royal Banquet Hall, which is inside the Arendelle Castle, which is incredible looking. Okin OK Foods, which is another counter service. In Peter Pan, they have the Lookout Cookout, which is Lost Boys themed. So the Lost Boys created your food for you. Really incredible theming there. And then in Rapunzel's Forest, they have the Snuggly Duckling. All of these are counter service, so there's no sit down restaurants there. And just be prepared. Like if you get in the morning, let's say you get a time for the afternoon, start looking at those mobile orders if you want to sort of be able to order by the time you're going to be able to get there. Because like I said, we waited. I even looked about an hour before our time, and it just basically said they had turned off mobile ordering because they had all their orders through the rest of the day. And so we were kind of out of luck there. So a little planning ahead if you want to eat in these places. But the Royal Banquet Hall looks amazing. The Lookout Cookout looks amazing. I mean, the theming is top notch in each one of these counter service restaurants.
So for the mobile ordering and stuff, I guess for all of this, how much of a sense do you have that it was this crazy just because it was the first day? And I'm sure you've been paying attention a little bit. Has it been like that? I mean, as we were talking, it's only the 11th day. So has it been that crazy, or was the first day particularly bad?
I think just it's going to depend on when you're visiting. So as this gets sort of more seasoned, if you're not there on a crazy day, there are some Tokyo Disney crowd calendars you can look at to see how you're going to do. And Disney also has variable pricing. So if you're on a higher price day, you're probably going on a busier day. I can say confidently through many visits to Tokyo Disney Resort that on busy days, these sorts of things are going to be maximized. They don't mind paying for Disney Premier Access, so they don't mind in Japan paying for the access if they need to instead of waiting. So, like for instance, Beauty and the Beast is the newest ride at Tokyo Disneyland. On a busy day, Beauty and the Beast Premier Access, their paid Fast Pass, will sell out within the first hour. So you got to sort of be on top of that. I didn't see among the other restaurants anywhere that mobile order was selling out, way in advance. So I would imagine it just really depends on the day. And I would imagine this loosens up more over time. But you can keep an eye on it because you can just look at the restaurants and when their return times are. It's kind of weird because you have to order for a return time and then you have a separate return time for being able to even get in the land. And just so you know, that's not a loophole. They very specifically say that if you order something for one of those restaurants and you don't have that standby access to get to the land, they're not going to let you in. So it sounds more complicated than it is, but once you get the few basic things down with there, I will say the app is built to look very similar to the US app. That wasn't always the case. It has the same backend. You can log in with your US account credentials, link your tickets there. It works really well. So the app is in English and it works perfectly. And so if you're used to navigating the US parks, you'll do just fine in the app. But I do feel bad for people who are not used to that or don't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does it work? Because that's always the big thing when it comes to the Disney app. All right, so before we get to Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey, which I think is the biggest part of Fantasy Springs, anything else we missed that we need to talk about?
There is a fourth area of the land, and that is basically where the Fantasy Springs Hotel is. And there's a couple things of note there. Fantasy Springs Hotel is this ultra luxurious hotel that they built in the back of the park. It sits right at the back of Fantasy Springs, has direct access. It can see everything. The rooms there apparently are sold out the minute they go online for this hotel. So if you're wanting to stay there, crazy room prices. I think this makes Disney Sea, because Disney Sea at the entrance has the Hotel Miracosta. So I think this is the first theme park that has a hotel on both sides, the front and the back. But that's where the main gift shop is here, the Fantasy Springs shop. Lines to get into this shop for the merch were anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour. At some points, they were restricting it to locals with the pass holder IDs and stuff. I'm sure that will change, but I'm sure there will always be a line to get in there, because unlike Galaxy's Edge, and this is a huge difference, they did not throw in merch every single place. The Fantasy Springs shop is huge, and then there's a little kiosk out towards like the main entrance as you're walking from the old part of Disney Sea. But everywhere you go, there is not a shop everywhere. They're not trying to sell you everything. And that helps sort of build the thing. But in the Fantasy Springs area, you have their main gift shop for the area, and then tons of fountains, which are colorful at night, that kind of blend the hotel into the Fantasy Springs. So that is technically part of the land as well. And lots of fountains, lots of water everywhere, lots of that rock work with the characters. And then if you do want to get merch, which we did not have time to wait, unfortunately, I was really sad about that because I wanted opening day or at least Fantasy Springs merch. You're going to wait in a decent line, which is not uncommon in Japan. A lot of the shops can have lines and can have specific standby passes just for different shops, depending on how busy they are, which is nuts.
All right, let's get to the crown jewel of the land, which is Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey. Now, the reason why I insulted you, apparently, and said it was a plus-up version of Frozen Ever After is because my impression is that it's like Frozen Ever After telling the story, but maybe just an amazing version of that.
Well, Joe, not to get nerdy on you, but technically Frozen Ever After is a sequel to Frozen. It takes place after Frozen 1. So that's the ride at Epcot or in Hong Kong Disneyland. So it does not tell the story of the first Frozen movie, whereas Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey tells the story of Frozen 1 exactly as it is in the movie. So I guess similar to Tiana's Bayou Adventure, how that is a sequel to Tiana, to The Princess and the Frog. That's how Frozen Ever After in Epcot technically is, whereas this is going to tell you the movie sort of straightforward. And on the surface, that doesn't sound too exciting to me, to be quite honest. I like Frozen. I actually like Frozen Ever After. Happy in Hong Kong that they decided to put real animatronics compared to the projected faces. But I'm the kind of person where I'll notice all the sort of little things that are bad, and I might complain a little bit, but I feel like there's too much negativity in the space. And when it comes down to it, I still enjoy it. I enjoy Frozen Ever After at Epcot, so I'm not trashing it in any way. But this is a whole different thing. And it's a whole different thing to the level where I think that Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey competes with the title of Disney's best dark ride ever. It starts when you're in the Kingdom of Arendelle and you're in the town. And like I said, they didn't squeeze every little merch shop or anything in here, but they really did build the town of Arendelle with moats going to the castle. You have the frozen ice castle and all the rock work sort of behind you. And when you're standing in that courtyard, you really feel like you're in the middle of the movie.
That is very cool. I am still like not. I'm just like not over the fact that I didn't realize that Frozen Ever After was not a retelling the story. I mean, it's like they sing all the same songs from the movie. How did I not notice this? So I just feel so ashamed right now. So you're in Arendelle, and then you like feel like you're in Arendelle when you go into the attraction. Let's dig deeper into this one than we did to the other ones. The queue, like, is there anything, because you got the standby access, right? Did you feel like it was a worthy queue? And you know what? Frozen Ever After's queue is not bad because you go through Wonder and Okins and stuff like that. I know it's only a small section, but, you know, how did you feel about the queue before you got to the attraction itself?
The queue is insane. I don't know how else to describe it. So you're going into the castle, and every little thing that you see in the movies, every little painting that's on the wall, some of the rooms that you see in the movies is recreated here. So you really feel like you're in Anna and Elsa's house. And if you know the movie well, they spent just an incredible amount of time and effort to recreate the details of that here in the queue. And it's great. And the boat ride itself it doesn't use like the futuristic technology like we saw in Shanghai Pirates or something. It's more of a traditional flume ride like Pirates of the Caribbean, I would say. But as you go through it, the level of detail is insane. And everything is full on animatronics. A lot of talk in the Disney community lately about Tiana's Bayou Adventure and some of the really cool animatronics that they used there. And Tokyo has been using these for a while. Beauty and the Beast Dark Ride debuted with some incredible animatronics a couple years ago. This has so many animatronics. Every room is just packed with them. And yeah, you go basically through the story of Frozen 1, but the scene design, the set detail, the amount of everything that goes into this, all of the effects, like the way that Anna gets frozen with, everybody knows the story as you go through it. It's not a surprise, but everything is done so well. The only scene I guess is sort of similar is you do end up in a place where Elsa is singing "Let It Go" and she blasts you backwards, similar to the other ride, but even that has a different context. So I only got to ride it once, Joe, and I don't feel like once was enough. I will tell you that there was a couple in our boat with us. So it was just us and another couple. And the man of the couple was crying at the end of this ride. That's how overwhelming it was. They really accomplished something I didn't think that they could. And I will say that going back to Beauty and the Beast, which was the other most recent ride at Tokyo Disneyland, to me, that's a trackless dark ride, has just a few scenes. And it felt almost like when I watched the video of it, a show that you would go into and be kind of transported around. Didn't seem all that interesting. And then last year I got to ride it for the first time, just absolutely blown away by it. I think Beauty and the Beast is a top 3 ride. This is sort of the same thing where you're just like, oh, it's another Fantasyland ride. And then you realize when they spend the level of money and detail, they can just create something that's so incredible. And you start to see, I think, in some of the other offerings we get in the US, where there's holes in that. It doesn't mean they're bad, but you don't get this level of intense detail.
It's like the difference between an A minus and an A plus, if we're going to go with the teaching terms. Oh, and then the other thing that Japan doesn't have to deal with, I know it gets humid there, but it's not Florida heat and humidity. I'm sure you've seen that already. Tiana's animatronics are having some trouble just because of the heat and humidity and stuff like that. And Rise of the Resistance, I've long said does worse in Walt Disney World than in Disneyland just because, again, of the heat and the humidity. So I don't know, maybe the Disney it's probably not the Imagineers' decision, but whoever's calling the shots at Disney, maybe they need to have their animatronics tested in super hot and humid. Just do it in a sauna. Like, build your stuff in a sauna, and that will work. Now, I want to ask you, nerd out a little bit with you, Shawn. To my knowledge, I feel like you have once told me that Shanghai Pirates was you thought that was the best Disney attraction, period. I think stateside Flight of Passage is your pick, but worldwide, it was Shanghai Pirates. And if I'm not mistaken, Beauty and the Beast did not overtake Shanghai Pirates, even though you just said it was really good. But now you're saying Anna and Elsa's Frozen Adventure is overtaking Shanghai Pirates. So comparing those 3, Shanghai Pirates, Beauty and the Beast, and Anna and Elsa's Frozen Adventure, to you, why does Anna and Elsa come out on top? And I know it's not just recency bias, because Beauty and the Beast did not top Pirates for you.
Yeah, it's difficult. I saw Attractions 360. Shout out to them. Great POVs and stuff. I saw him say that Frozen had gone to the top over Shanghai Pirates for him, which made me, I almost hadn't considered it because there's such different types of rides. I'm going back and forth. I think that I'll put them as like co-number ones. For me, Pirates is such a special franchise, and the boat tech, I wish that they had used that higher tech boat tech in this ride, although I'm sure it would have made the footprint much bigger, and there's logistical reasons for them not doing it. But Pirates in Shanghai is just so groundbreaking in the way the boats move, the epic sort of scenes and what you go through. And just the level of detail with Frozen here, I feel like reaches out to that. I would say if I had to go top 4 rides, I would add into the, Beauty and the Beast and then Mystic Manor over at Hong Kong Disneyland, because it adds sort of that same kind of classic Disney theming onto a ride concept that we know, but in a great trackless dark ride setting. I love all these rides because they're telling stories in a fun way, giving you lots of detail. I've long been critical of Galaxy's Edge, or specifically Rise of the Resistance, because I don't think it's all that re-rideable and all that fun. Like, when I get off of it, I think, wow, that was a technical achievement. They're doing all this crazy stuff, but did I really have fun? And specifically when I go back, do I have fun? And man, just going on Frozen with the smells, the detail. I mean, there is so much I couldn't even just capture in my one time through that ride. I could even just tell I was missing so many details. The level of the animatronics, the quality, like I said, Tiana's has some of these, what do they call them? A1000, whatever they're called, the super advanced animatronics. They are doing such an amazing job with. I don't know. I
Wait,
don't
no,
know. I
Arnold's
just
not the
there's
T1000.
a
Arnold's
there's
not
a
the T1000.
I,
Robert Patrick's the
yeah.
T1000. Sorry, but yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
There is a thing about him that people nerdier than me know the model number, but yeah, it achieves it. So on a storytelling perspective, I think all of those rides are sort of next level. I wish we would get more of that. But when you're thinking that Oriental Land Company spent $2 billion on this expansion, that does include like two new hotels and stuff, but a vast majority of this is for the rides. It makes you wonder how if we're ever going to get anything that's this detailed and ornate in the United States. And to your point, A plus versus A minus, I feel like a lot of Disney fans get caught up in what we're missing without still enjoying the greatness of what we have. I think Tiana's is a great example of that. You could choose to say, well, it's not as good as Splash Mountain. And again, I haven't been on it, but you could also say, yeah, it's a great ride, and it is missing. So, you could tell where they cut back here or cut back there, or that scene that transitions a little dark here. You don't have any of that in Frozen. Every place you look for that entire ride is there's a set piece there. There's high quality animatronic there. There's an effect there. The one criticism you could have is they do cut the final few scenes of the movie, put those on screens towards the end because they ran out of physical space, I guess. But yeah, I mean that would be the only sort of critical thing of it. So I guess we're gonna put, long story, we'll put the Shanghai Pirates and Frozen as a tie for one with Beauty and the Beast number two, and then Mystic Manor. How about that?
Love it. I do love me some Mystic Manor. And I mean, that sounds amazing. Yeah, it is fun to just hear about how, I can't remember the exact phrase, but it's like when you see that the money, like when you're watching a movie and you can see where the money went, like that's what it feels like with this Fantasy Springs event expansion. You can see where the money went when Disney invested. And who knows, Sean? Disney and the state of Florida, they're friends again. They say they're going to spend $17 billion. We'll see how much of that is fixing animatronics that cannot handle the Florida humidity. Now, really quickly, before we get out of here, just because you're one of the first people to have been in Fantasy Springs, to put you on the spot a little bit, if there were, say, 2 or 3 things that you would encourage anyone who's visiting to do, not attraction wise, right? Obviously, you're going to try to get on all attractions you can. What are a couple kind of maybe things people might not think about that they need to do at Fantasy Springs?
I think, obviously climbing on Skull Rock and spending time through Neverland, sort of just weaving your way through there is really cool. And then taking a lot of the shops in Arendelle. Again, they didn't make any of this into retail space. So you have the whole village there, but you're not going inside the buildings. But all of the shop windows, as you would expect with Disney, have theming and have special little touches to them. So making sure you go through all of that. And then looking for all the different characters. All of the springs are everywhere spread throughout the land. So you want to go find your favorite characters. The kids will enjoy that as well. So it's not just the characters that are featured in the rides, but pretty much every character you can think of has some rock work throughout the land. And then if you can possibly do it, and we got lucky enough to be able to go right at sort of dusk into dark. So I was able to see it during the day and then at night. It is incredibly gorgeous at night. I guess it would be similar to sort of the world of Avatar and how it transforms at night, but lots of LED lighting, lots of multicolor effects. The springs are beautiful. So definitely make a point to be there at night and see it at night, because it does take on a whole nother look there. And I just want to say one other thing about Disney Sea, because I feel like everybody will say Disney Sea is the best theme park in the world, and it's true. But as someone who's been there quite a few times over the years, my first visit in 2008, I will say that Disney Springs isn't the most revisitable park, or it hadn't been up until now. Their last few big expansions like Tower of Terror, Midway Mania, and Soaring, they're all much higher themed versions of rides you can get in the US. But when that park opened, it was a lot of unique original rides. Like they did have an Indiana Jones, but it was a completely unique story. Journey to the Center of the Earth, the 20,000 Leagues. And they went away from that for a while and started cloning rides from the US parks. I felt like it got a little bit redundant for me. Like visiting there, I would much rather, I guess for re-rideability, revisit Tokyo Disneyland was a better park for that. But this adds, I think, a whole nother layer and dimension that it really needed. These dark boat rides for the families. Like I said, Sinbad, if people haven't been on that ride, that is like It's a Small World type ride in there. Compass of Your Heart, amazing song that will get in your head. And then you add in everything else. The best park just got better. And my big thing about Disney Sea is every single time I walk in the park, that volcano takes my breath away. I was like, wow, this is in a theme park. And I am happy to say that even on this trip, it still happened. And yeah, it's a great park. People should try to go there. We paid $138 a day for all three of our tickets combined to go to Tokyo Disney. On the cheapest day, 150 total for three of us. On the most expensive day, it's so cheap there right now. So that's another great reason. The food is relatively cheap. You can get sodas for $1.50 in the vending machines. They don't overcharge for that. So there are some other cool benefits as well. And Tokyo Disneyland, I know Leslie just talked about it. Can't underscore what a unique, cool park that is with the Better Pooh and now Beauty and the Beast and the Baymax Happy Ride, Joe, which I heard that you're not a fan of these whip rides like the alien swirling saucers, but you haven't done Baymax yet, have you?
I haven't done Baymax yet, and I feel like Baymax would just feel so much more inviting than alien swirling saucers, and so would happily try to do that.
Well, for people who don't know, yes, it is that same ride system, but in Tokyo, they have a special soundtrack. There's 6 songs that play. They're all about a minute long, and you can actually find these songs on Spotify, Joe. I was so excited because it was down for the week we were there for its annual refurbishment, but there's special dances that go with each of these songs. So while you're waiting in the queue, you can learn all the dances. Everybody does it waving their hands and does the specific dances for each of these songs. And there are groupies who go to Tokyo Disneyland just to stand outside this ride and do the songs. So it's very cultural. It's very fun. So the entire time you're in the queue, you're going to be learning the songs. You're going to be doing a measure on the ride. I just wanted to put that on people's radar because I don't feel like the quirks of Baymax Happy Ride have been covered enough. And I wanted to impart that little thing. And if you really want to know, go to Spotify. You can hear all the 6 songs and understand why this place is so special and why we're all Baymax. We got Baymax. I got Baymax sunglasses. Ellie got her Baymax stuff. They got us with all the Baymax merch this time, Joe.
So you didn't buy merch at Fantasy Springs, but you bought it thanks to this whip ride, which you could find at any carnival. But that's the magic of Disney. Even Aliens Rolling Saucers is better than any other whip ride. So amazing. Amazing. Well, this has been awesome. I am really glad that we got the chance to talk about your experience about Fantasy Springs. As you know, we like to end with a Disney do or don't. Do you have a Tokyo Disney Sea Fantasy Springs do or don't? That was a mouthful for us, Shawn.
Do your research ahead of time. Just understand how the app works, the standby pass works. They have great instructions in the app, so not a huge deal. Do show up about an hour before the park opens. Don't expect to walk in an hour after the park opens and to be able to get everything. Just know that the vast majority of the visitors will get there within that first hour, and most of them ahead of time. So this is one set of parks where you're going to want to get there early. And then do also know that these parks handle crowds incredibly well. They're busy all of the time. Everybody's very orderly. There's going to be lines everywhere. So chances are if you're going to Tokyo Disney, you're going to be waiting in lines, whether it's for popcorn or food or anything else. So just slow down, embrace it for what it is. Because I hate lines and you can't really escape it. I mean, thankfully, I will say do use mobile order, whether it's in Fantasy Springs or anywhere else. That has saved so much time because usually the lines for eating anywhere are crazy, and now you can just order ahead and do it. That's been a game changer.
I've got one more Tokyo Fantasy Springs Disney do for you, courtesy of longtime listener Jeremy, who is heading out there in a week or so. This is only for those of you who want to spend the money, but for guests that are staying at the Fantasy Springs Hotel, which he is not, and like you said, it's very hard to get in there, or if you have a Tokyo Disney Resort vacation package plan, which I think is more expensive than just staying at a Tokyo Disney Resort. Well, if you qualify via either of those things, you can pay another up to 25,000 yen, which is about $150 for what's this thing called? The 1-day passport Fantasy Springs Magic. And that will give you priority access to the 3 rides that have it. And then you can it'll allow you standby access to the Tinkerbell fairy tale thing. So just in case you want to spend your way, for you, Shawn, number one, by the way, please go listen to our Miles to Memories podcast. We talked about all of Shawn's trip to Asia. When you're listening to this, we released it 2 weeks ago. Miles to Memories, anywhere you find podcasts. And we talked about, Shawn, how you used miles and points to stay in Tokyo. And so you weren't staying on Tokyo Disney property. So this wasn't going to apply to you no matter what. And you're probably going to be back sometime. Like you said, you're going to be back for Rapunzel, even though you didn't get to do it this time. But if you are taking your trip to Tokyo, this is your one time. You want to make sure you get on all 4 rides. You want to spend all this extra money, that's a way to get to do all of that and not worry about any of the other stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it also includes unlimited access. So I believe you can ride all the rides multiple times in a day. So, like you said, it's significantly more expensive than a regular ticket, but you can book some of the other hotels. You don't have to book the Fantasy Springs Hotel to get that. So it definitely could be worth it for people to make sure you get that package if you want that ticket. I think if this is a once in a lifetime trip, $250 isn't a crazy amount, especially if you're used to US prices and you can go on those rides multiple times over and over again. I think that's definitely a thing people should pursue. And I don't know, like I don't want to spend crazy amounts of money on a hotel, Joe, but the fact that you can't book the Fantasy Springs Hotel makes me want to try to book it now. It
I
looks
feel the
really
same way
nice.
about, or I felt the same way about Miracosta. Like, I don't necessarily need to like wake up and, well, I guess it would be cool to wake up and like look at the volcano, but it wasn't something that I felt like I needed to do. But just because, it's the game, right? It's the game of trying to get it. I totally feel and hear what you're saying. And I think if I already spent the money to stay at Fantasy Springs Hotel, and if I like got that, I would probably pay for this pass. And great call. I didn't even see that. I was reading through the terms and conditions as we were talking, and I missed this at the end. There is no limit to the number of times guests can experience attractions. So that's cool, especially if you want to ride Frozen a couple times, or any of the rides really a couple times, and just soak in all the different details that they have. One last shout out for Sinbad. I wrote that 5 or 6 times just to soak in all the details. Well, Shawn, this has been awesome. Can you please remind people one more time where they can find you and they can find your work?
At Miles to Memories all over social media, on YouTube, 20 Minute Travel, and MTM Vegas over there. And yeah, everything we do, milestomemories.com.
And you can find me at As Joe Flies all over social media, Joseph Chung at travelmation.net if you're booking a Disney trip to anywhere but Tokyo. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Shawn, thanks again for coming on. Everyone who has listened, please, if you have any questions, do reach out to Shawn. He's very helpful. He's always great about answering things. Or let me know if you have any questions and I can pass them along to him as well. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will talk to you next time.